Cool. So yeah, the main reason I sort of wanted to arrange this chat was sort of been watching things as this whole crisis has been developing, and particularly in the early stages. But continuing as we've seen as we've gone through, it's been quite an interesting sort of study in terms of leadership and how certain organisations and certain leaders have reacted and so on. And a lot of it, I think, has actually been awful. There've been some great examples of stuff, but there's been some really awful stuff as well. And I'd thought about doing a video which would have just been me, and it could have actually turned into just a massive rant. And I thought, you know what, no one wants to see that. Let's actually get someone in who knows what he's talking about, and maybe sort of dive into it a bit deeper and try and get a handle on what people are doing, what shouldn't have been done, what should have been done, and obviously what could current leaders or aspiring leaders take away from that in this sort of situation. So welcome, Mark.
Thanks.
For everyone watching, this is Mark Brooks of Gemini Consulting. He's the person who actually knows what he's talking about, I hope. We'll see that over the sort of next half an hour or so. So I guess first things first, Mark, what's your initial sort of reaction been to how people have sort of responded to this as it's been unfolding?
I think what most people have been surprised about is the difficulty people have had initially making that transition into leading in such an uncertain situation. No one would have expected people to have known what to do in this situation. No one was sat there going, we've got our pandemic plan in our back pocket, ready to roll. Everyone knows what to do. But I think a great majority of people I've been talking to have said, I just don't think we thought we'd be this bad at it. Mm. The interesting thing is things like, it's definitely been for the last 10 years easily that people have been saying that we need to start getting better at working from home, taking that sort of freedom, allowing people to work in different arenas, being able to pick up a laptop and go to the coffee shop, or be able to work from a service station, things like this, people being out on the road. And everyone says, yes, the idea of leadership is the idea of the micromanaging leader. It's archaic, it's out of date. We don't do that anymore. We give people much more freedom. And then when something like this happens, they go, we didn't actually give much freedom at all, because we've got to turn the organization on its head overnight, and we're just not prepared already, and we just don't know what to do. So I think that's been one of the most interesting things for me is seeing leaders work out how to lead in a way that they've never been able to do it before. The phrase I'm hearing the most is disappearing leaders, where it's just not happening. They go, okay, this week I've sent out an email, they know what they're working on. They go, but that's not what they need.
Mm. Is it interesting that disappearing leaders? That sounds like the very worst thing that could happen at this time. I suppose now is a time when you need leaders to be much more visible to their employees. Obviously not in person, but certainly much more active and involved. And to what extent, from what you've seen, are people sort of backing off from? Is that an abdication of responsibility, or is it just a case of I don't really know how to do this?
Definitely a bit of both. I think there's a significant part of I don't know what to do here, especially when you believed for a while that you had an agile workforce, and then you have to have an agile workforce, and you go, so clearly I didn't have an agile workforce. I don't know what I'm doing here. But I think there's also this I don't want to be chasing them mentality, is that I'm used to being visible whilst not being too present. And if they need me, they'll call me, that kind of mentality. Whereas now they're saying, well, I told them what they're working on. I check in on them. They know my door's always open on my phone call, rather. Yeah, I'll always be at the other end of a phone call. But that's not what people need. And people have very distinct individual needs at this point, and never more is it more important to address people as individuals than as teams and taking a blanket approach. Right, here's the email, we'll speak in another week. 5 people out of every 100 go, brilliant. And so then you've got to think about, how do you deal with the other ones?
Yeah.
What else do they need?
And how would you say, how do you go about that? What's,
I mean, I think it's a tough one, because there are a number of models that you could look at for different styles of people. You'll know that I spend a lot of time using the DISC model as an idea, and you can say, okay, well, the dominance type approach, they just want the information, they want to know what's expected of them, they just want to be, let me get on with it and get out of my way and allow me to achieve it. Great, but that won't work for everyone. The influence type role would want a chat, want some sort of communication, want to know that, things, there's something new and exciting coming. This is an opportunity for new innovation and ideas. That's exciting. Again, that's not going to work for everyone. Steadiness just wants to know that things are secure. Now, at a time like this, what promises can you make? Who knows what's going on in every organization, because even the organizations don't know what the next thing will be. But instead, to know that they're valued and that they have an important role to play, that's going to be important. Then you've got your compliant person who, you can help them to put in place these robust systems and procedures for getting things done to achieve it. You've got those 4 roles. The compliant person wants an email. The steadiness wants an individual conversation. The influence person wants a large house party style Zoom call equivalent. And your dominance probably just wants the heading of the email to tell them what the information was in the email, and then blank email. That's pretty much all they want. Just get out of my way and allow me to achieve it. So there are things that you can do using such models, but then you've got an individual behind that. And we've talked in the past about emotional intelligence and things like this. That's just when it goes a level deeper. So you could have 2 people who have a preference towards influence, but are completely different underneath it, with the way in which they feel the level of optimism they feel. I mean, anyone who, no matter how optimistic they are, is having a trying time right now. So there's an individual behind it. And I think at this point, some leaders may realize now how much they don't know about some of their people. And that's going to make it very difficult to connect at a time when it's most important to connect.
Absolutely. So it would have been ideal for them to have known that before we went into this, so they know straight away. So now
Right.
they're having to learn these things about their people, but without being actually able to properly connect with them to learn those things. So yeah.
Slightly less convenient now to try and connect with someone when it's been done over a computer screen or a telephone line.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things we know about this is it will pass eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later, but obviously, remains to be seen at this point. But how do you think this will affect things moving forward when we actually come out of this whole situation?
Well, no one can expect it to go back to, inverted commas, normal with any immediate nature at all. It just can't. So immediately there'll be, offices won't just open, everyone go back in and we continue, because we've already, as a nation, people are talking about the fact that we've learned offices may not be as important as we once thought, when we've proven how much effectiveness people can have whilst at home, whilst connecting like we are now, having these types of conversations, running web conference calls, running web meetings. Do you want to start that a little bit again?
No, it's fine.
Typical. But yeah, running any kind of interactive content, running, getting people communicating differently where they don't need to be in the same place as one another. Well, that's one of the most significant costs that most businesses face.
So it's going to be interesting with that, actually, but particularly for a lot of people seeing this video, but will obviously be working in facilities management, so it's a big issue for them.
Right.
But on the one hand, we've got this, oh yeah, we can all work from home. It does work. Hopefully leaders will become a bit more outcome focused as opposed to process, and therefore don't need to be doing the micromanagement. But at the same time, I don't know about you, but I and imagine a lot of people are also craving that opportunity to get back and to meet with people in person, to work with people, to have someone at the desk next to you, whether that be in an office, a coffee shop, wherever, but to have that kind of hub. And so, I doubt we're going to go back to a point where, we're not going to move to a point where everyone is just working from home all the time. But by the same token, I think there is a possibility for things to change. So yeah, it's interesting sort of potential on that. But I think what I'd be interested to know about is how this changes leadership. And I've sort of just mentioned it just there. This sort of, I think people are going to be forced now, because of where we are, to be more outcome focused when they're leading their people, as opposed to micromanaging. Can that be sustained when we go back, do you think? Or do you think a lot of people in that respect, I appreciate it in a lot of ways, it won't go back just to how it was before, but there is a chance, positive or negative, that the leadership or the management side does maybe go back and say, right, we're all back together now, so now I'm going to go back to rather than just focusing on you getting on with things and getting things done, actually I'm going to go back to monitoring it carefully. And the other question, of course, related to that is, as the next sort of generation of leaders comes through, who maybe haven't been leading in this situation, are they going to go back to old principles and go back to more of a sort of a micromanagement sort of style?
I mean, leadership has evolved so much over the ages, and yet the core principles remain the same. It's just the way in which people deliver it is changing. I think now we are in a time where there's such an abundance of information accessible that people are now talking about leadership. It's not just the person behind that office is a leader. They're saying that anyone can be a leader within their role. It doesn't take a title. But the idea, we talked about the grid model once, which was the idea that the focus on people runs upwards and the focus on task runs across ways, saying that creates 4 boxes: low focus on people and low focus on task. Well, that's not very effective. Not much gets done. Up in the top left-hand corner, we've got a full focus on people, but not much focus on task. But it's a bit of a party. We're having a great time. Some things get done, but it's not going to be the most strategic place in the world. You can then go into the bottom right, instead all the focus on task, not much on people. In general, this tends to be pretty productive to begin with. It will have a high rate of profits, a high rate of sales, whatever it would be, the tangible measurables in that environment, and then it will have a high staff turnover. So everyone always thought that the top right-hand corner box would be the ultimate: high focus on people and high focus on task. And then some psychologists and theorists started to do more investigation. They identified a principle which is referred to as the Sinecube model, which instead said that if you're all about the top right-hand corner, all the people and all the task, that's great. However, you could be doing it to be entirely self-serving. And if you're doing it entirely self-serving, then that can't be seen as a good thing. If you're giving off the smiles and everything, showing the people, oh yeah, you're really valued, going, this should push me forwards. Everything's about me and making sure it's somewhat of a Machiavellian type theory here, but that can't be a good thing. So this is where they said it was 3-dimensional. So the same grid, but they have a front face and a back face, and the back face would be all that negativity stuff. Instead, you want that front face, top right-hand corner, where the other axes, if you like, is values. So having positive company values and negative company values would be your front and your back face. Now, the reason I mention that is I think one of the most interesting things that will come out of this isn't necessarily how leaders have been, achieving results, or how they've been succeeding in the past and how they cruised through this uncertainty. Instead, I think there's going to be a lot that's for those leaders, how they emerged during this, that starts to rewrite the way in which leadership takes place. For years we always wanted stiff upper lip, the person you didn't speak to, they spoke to you. That's the history of old school leadership. And now we want the Richard Branson to this one. I know he's not exactly a fresh new leader, as in he's been around a while, but yet still the way he does things, incredible. And this is a man who makes light of every failure because he takes it as something really successful for him because he's learned something from it. I mean, that's fantastic. So we're finding that we've now got leaders who allow themselves to be vulnerable, who are out there, part of the company. I've heard about leaders who walk through the back door of the warehouse, through all the people who are packaging boxes, all the people in the manufacturing, and then he goes up to his director's suite and tells all the directors what they've got to do based on the conversations he's had with everyone on the shop floor. And that's a real twist. It's no longer does he see the value in those at the top. They're there because they can be strategic enough to deliver what the people say they need.
Mm.
So leadership does evolve and it changes over the ages. What this is likely to show is the greatest success people can bring when they are allowed some more freedom, some more flexibility. There's obviously, we have to look at the other side of this. This has made some very difficult decisions have to happen. Furloughing and in some cases redundancies and things like this. These are very difficult decisions. I don't think this is going to affect how successful a leader is. And it's going to be about how they did those things, not whether they did those things. So I think leadership will not be the same after this because too many lessons have been learned.
Hopefully.
I hope. Yes.
It's an interesting one, actually, the grid model or the 3D version of it. And we spoke about this previously, didn't we? But it sort of, I really liked that model in the context of, I think when this whole thing kicked off, there were a lot of just knee-jerk reactions from a lot of organisations, and there were people getting made redundant before we were even in lockdown, before we even had any idea of how this would be. And that was what I mentioned at the start. I could have ended up ranting about this. That was one of the things that I found terrible. The fact that the first reaction of a lot of companies or a lot of leaders was, I'll protect my assets, sod the rest of them, lay them off, but I'm all right, Jack. And this was before. And then 2 days later we had the furlough scheme, which is it's not a perfect solution, but it's a damn sight better than laying people off.
Protected a lot of those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's looking at that grid model, I think there'll be a lot of people that when the times were good, they were right there in that and in the 2D sweet spot, and people and tasks, great, having a party and getting things done. And then suddenly, when things started going wrong, we learned actually they weren't actually quite as good as they thought they were.
People will remember how leaders led during this time. It doesn't matter if they've had 20, 30 years of success and been fairly popular or had been that stiff upper lip. You never spoke to them, but they got the results. It'd be irrelevant. I can tell you people like Mike Ashley, for example, won't come away from this unscathed. Trying to enforce that Sports Direct is essential during this time. The press just went after him, and he's not exactly been endeared to them in the past anyway. But I think the most surprising thing, if you remember going back, and this is quite a long time ago, it was Michael O'Leary of EasyJet. No, Ryanair.
Yeah.
He obviously it'd always been, our job would be much easier if it wasn't for the passengers. These types of quotes that surrounded him. And all of a sudden, one day he came out and says, people have spoken, with their money. We got it wrong. We got it wrong, and our customers are really important. We hope to make it up to them someday. And that was a gobsmacking moment. And in many ways, so it was when Mike Ashley and Sports Direct had put out a press release to say, we now understand how unsanitary it was for us to do that type thing. It was really, it was obnoxious. It was unsympathetic. It lacked all sorts of empathy for the people, how it would affect them, but also those people whose businesses did shut because it was the right and responsible thing to do, looking on going, well, hold on, why are you not going to be held accountable to close your business as well? And so, it was an interesting time. And again, leaders will be remembered for how they led at the hardest of times.
Yeah. It's almost, when you sort of look for silver linings in situations like this, and it's almost, one of those silver linings could be this, that It's may have exposed a lot of bad leaders and also given a lot of good leaders the chance to really shine. And hopefully that will be picked up and recognised, whether it be a small business, managing to come out of this and do well as a result of their actions during the time, or whether it's people within larger organisations having their potential sort of recognised and rewarded. It's you would hope, but again, that's going to depend on good leaders above them to spot these things as well. So interesting one. So cool. Okay, well, I think that's probably all we've got time for now. I want to keep this. Don't want to keep this too long, so people have actually got time to read it. But there's been a lot of interesting stuff covered here, and obviously a lot more than what we've been able to dive into today. So just before we sign off, I need just give a quick, just let everyone know who you are and how people can get hold of you if they're interested in finding out a bit more.
So I'm Mark Brooks, the Managing Director of Gemini Training and Consulting. We have the website geminitraining.co.uk, and you can contact me at mark@geminitraining.co.uk. We provide a full consultancy around everything learning development, people improvement. We deliver courses, write courses, but also we come in and help do the training needs analysis to understand what it is that businesses need to help their people thrive. And that's what we do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for your time. And I hope for everyone watching, I hope it's been useful. I hope it's been interesting. I always found talking to Mark interesting, to be fair. So he was the first person I thought of when I wanted to sort of do one of these. We'll be putting out more of these. So, keep an eye out. Thank you very much. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.